Hello and welcome to the Walk Around podcast powered by JM&A Group. If you are in the automotive business, you have found the right place. You'll learn how to grow your dealership, grow your automotive career with us, and learn some actionable insights in sales, finance, fixed operations, and leadership. I am one of your hosts, Mark Spoto, and I will be joined by my co-host, Elliot Shore. And today our guest is Adam Robinson. Adam is the co-founder and CEO of Hireology, where he drives his mission of helping business owners make better hiring decisions using predictive data and innovative technology. You know, he has been at this for more than 20 years, and Adam is a noted recruiting industry expert. He's a speaker, he's an author. He's got a great book, The Best Teams Wins, and he has a Best Team Wins podcast as well. So you can check him out online. And this conversation was just really fantastic when it comes to how do you retain, how do you grow, and how do you attract the right talent for your business? So let's take a walk around with Adam Robinson. Well, welcome back to the Walk Around podcast, Adam. It's really exciting to have you as a return guest.
Yep.
So much has happened in business, in labor, and hiring since the last time we spoke on the Walk Around. But before we get into that, let's focus a little bit about your journey. When you went to college, did you think you were going to come out of school recruiting or helping businesses find the right talent?
Well, yeah, no, and before, hold that thought for a second, because, you know, it's interesting. Mark and I were looking at your background. We're always fascinated by people who go from the corporate environment and start their own company. It takes a lot.
Yeah.
And so, we were curious, what was the impetus for you to start a company? Were you scared? Were you nervous? What were those emotions like? And what drove you to do that?
Yeah. What was your journey like?
So I went to college to be a high school history teacher.
Wow. We're far off the path, huh?
So yeah, I was a history and communications double major with a minor in sociology. So naturally, I was on a path to sell hiring software to car dealerships, right? You can see how that's
clear,
completely aligned. The thing they don't tell you about teaching history is that there's really nobody hiring for that. If I taught math or physics, that's an employable field in high school teaching. But I mean, these days, it's different now. We've got a real shortage of teachers. But in 1998, when I graduated from the University of Illinois, I could not find a job in teaching. And so a friend of mine that I graduated with had a job working for a technology staffing company in Chicago in the middle of Y2K, if anyone remembers, when the world was going to end because we were missing 2 digits. And
and I remember where I was on that night.
We all do.
Yeah, I remember where I was. Where it's like looking around.
Yeah,
in the bunker with your MREs ready.
Right. Exactly.
And then of course nothing happened. And then the first .com explosion. I mean, really the birth of the internet for business application use is really just fascinated by technology businesses and the businesses that we were helping staff up.
Sure.
And found that I liked the work that people I was placing into these companies. I liked the work they were doing more than I liked the work of actually being the recruiter that was doing it. And so I made a decision, this is right around the year 2000, that I was going to go work for a software startup. And, in Chicago in 2000, and just broadly speaking, the software startups they existed in 2 cities. It was San Francisco and Boston is really where all of that lived. Maybe Austin and New York as secondary markets. In Chicago, there's just not a lot there at the time. I was fortunate to network my way into a job that I was wholly unqualified for at the time at, 24 years old, to run a big part of the professional services team for a company called Click Commerce. And so if you think back to the way dealerships operated 22 years ago, anytime you wanted to order parts, submit warranty claims, get the latest marketing information, submit sales data, you did that through a fax machine.
Right.
Back then, right? And so Click Commerce was the first provider to take dealerships, and not just automotive, but cars, boats, bikes, aircraft. Most commercial and residential air conditioning systems are sold through dealer networks. Chemical gases.
Sure.
All of these business models are predicated on distribution networks that the manufacturer or brand doesn't own. And so Click Commerce's goal was to get these dealers connected directly to their OEM or to their brand or manufacturer through this new thing called the internet. And, so I spent 5 years flying around the world installing what we called dealer extranets at the time. I mean, now they're web portals, but installing dealer extranets in dealerships. And, back then there was no hosting, right? You had to literally bring your own server,
right,
and install it. We generally install it under the either in the closet in the back next to the DMS stack, or under the front desk up front, plug it into dial up and basically custom build thousands of websites for these dealer networks, which was successful, right? So I had a, inside look at what it takes to grow a software business and how to sell and service software in these dealer networks. The company went public in 2000, right as the bubble was bursting, and we had a real product. We weren't a .com, made it through, had a pretty good end result. But my biggest problem in doing service for, software service for dealer networks was the turnover rate at the dealerships was so exorbitantly high that our biggest problem was retraining the staff every 4 months on how to use software. Wow. And having come from the staffing industry, I started thinking about that problem, and I thought, gosh, these dealer networks are taking it on the chin in turnover. This is costing them a fortune. It's almost impossible to drive change in the business because the turnover is so high. And I started thinking about that problem. And so when I had the opportunity, Click Commerce was acquired by Illinois Toolworks in late 2004, early 2005, and I exited the business. I had a mind to start a company that would help solve this problem. So yes, the question was, it's scary. I think the most important trait an entrepreneur has is a complete lack of awareness of just how little chance they have to build a business that scales.
Yeah.
And so it's, a wanton disregard for the actual risk.
Right.
And so that's, my ultimate skill is ignore, is I guess calculated risk. Right. But just maybe, not quite understanding like what, not looking at the percentages and just going with conviction.
Well, I mean, I think you're underselling a little bit there because, what I heard in your story was identifying a major problem and trying to solve it.
And staying ahead of a trend.
Right. Staying ahead of a trend, seeing a problem in the market and finding a way to be a solution.
Yeah. So Adam, let's fast forward, and you've been at this now with Hireology for, close to 20 years. What are you seeing in terms of the labor market? Particularly as if you sit back as a dealer and look at their team and the need to hire top talent and people that are going to be committed to their dealerships and their stores. What are you seeing in terms of the labor market right now?
Well, I mean, first, the labor market, and there's a lot of hand-wringing going on right now about, how hot the labor market is and how that drives inflation and all that's going on at a macro level. The reality is we live in a time where we have never had a greater imbalance between the supply of labor and the demand for it. And so, folks are talking about a recession, either we're in one or one's coming. But, when it comes to the labor market and the talent that dealers rely on to run their business, we may be heading into a white collar employment recession.
Interesting.
But for skilled hourly talent or core talent salaried roles or production roles like sales or service advisors, we will never have enough people to fill those needs. So if you look at industries that rely on skilled hourly talent to run their business, I'm thinking about any business that's got a technician component to it, any business in healthcare, where you're finding credentialed healthcare employees, or anywhere there's any vocational aptitude required. We have 2 open jobs for every 1 available person, but in those industries, it's actually worse.
Really?
And
wow.
I don't think that supply demand curve ever comes back into balance. So the first thing that I say to dealers is this is never going to get any better. Particularly for your fixed operations side of the business. I mean, we're 60,000 technicians short over the next 5 years as a baseline.
Wow.
And so, if you think about what's going on in the economy and how dealers mitigate risk when new car SAR dips, you sell more used vehicles if you can find them, but you sell a lot more service. And so we're sitting on the precipice of what I believe is going to be maybe it's overstating it, but an explosion in service demand.
Right.
Both in just because consumers are going to hold cars longer, but also because, EVs have, anywhere from 200 to 1,000 sensors on these things. And to fix one of those, my God, you're spending weeks recalibrating sensors and waiting for semiconductors and all the things. And that explosion in demand is here forever as, the number of those vehicles hit the road. And so if I'm a dealer, what I know is fixed ops pays the bills and that demand's going up and there's never enough people. And so if my strategy is to increase, the cost absorption through better fixed operations and really sell into that demand, I better be the best in my market at recruiting and hiring technicians and people for the service side, period. Like
right.
we're not selling cars right now. We're taking orders.
Yeah.
I think that's here for a while. On the tech side, it's a zero-sum recruiting game. And so the question that I, as a dealer, would be asking is, do I want access to the best talent in my market? Do I want first crack at building my best team? Or do I want to be relegated to hiring from a pool of talent that everyone else has already decided wasn't good enough to work for them?
Right.
And that's the operative question. It's like, am I willing to do what I need to do to be great at this core and critical part of my business? Or am I just going to chalk it up to the way things always have been?
Right. No, it's interesting because we've talked a lot on this podcast about customer experience. We've talked a lot about retention. And we've talked a lot about the trends affecting the auto business, electrification, digital retailing. And it's interesting because I think, Adam, you come at it from you kind of tie all those together. I know we didn't just say those words or you didn't say them, but all of those trends that we see, one of the central questions is, how does the dealer stay relevant? Mm-hmm. It's a central question to all of those trends. And, if I hear you making the case that dealers will be relevant because service business is here to stay and will be here for a very long time. You can't do service online. There's no, sure, you can give a service update, right? But there's still the need to check vehicles in a multitude of arrays in a physical sense. Mm-hmm. And
yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, anytime you have a business where the product's a physical asset and it's a complex physical asset, you're going to need people to fix assets. I mean, it's just, definitionally true forever. And I'm reminded of these conversations we would have back in, the early 2000s where, at Click, the question was, with the birth of the internet, are dealers irrelevant?
Right.
right? Can't we just disintermediate the dealer and go direct to consumer? And that was all, remember, the experiment that Ford had back then and all the things. And the reality is the dealer, the OEM to dealer to consumer model is in the best interest of the consumer, because what they need is service at the end of the day. And you can't turn a wrench through a Zoom call, right? You can't coach someone on vehicle, maintenance and follow up with them in a way that they're actually going to benefit from completely programmatically. And so some parts of the selling process are absolutely automated with technology and through the internet. Those are all good things. But the dealer business model is one that benefits consumers in numerous ways. And importantly, the consumer wants to be able to drive a few miles to their local dealer for service. They don't want to deal with the mothership and wait in queues and do what happens when, you're trying to, get service from a company like Amazon. Like it just, you want that local option, and dealers serve that need, and it's because consumers want it. And the dealership model is not going anywhere.
No.
So Adam, I want to go back to a little bit what you said in terms of the supply not being able to meet the demand of top talent at dealers. And you mentioned, you just talked about how important it is to create that customer experience. And you asked an interesting question in terms of, are dealers willing to do what it takes to be really good at sourcing top talent? So let's get into that a little bit. What do you think it does take to be really good at that? What should dealers be doing to source and find the right people?
I mean, it sounds almost too simple, but the first decision that's made is about the intention to elevate the status of talent acquisition in your platform to core and critical and strategic to the business, right? So someone at the top has to say, I'm looking at this thing for the next 10 years, and it is so clear to me that this is never going anywhere. And it's so clear to me that being great at this is a strategic imperative. We're going to be great at this. Our intention is to be great at this, right? It can't come from the HR team.
Right.
It has to come from the leadership team saying people are core and critical. And so, 12 years ago, when I started Hireology, I spent a lot of time convincing people that it was going to be really important, that it already was, and that, really you can differentiate yourself by being better than everyone else now. It's table stakes now. I mean, just to stay staffed, it's table stakes. And so deciding that you're going to make the investment of time and intention to do it is important. Then you actually have to do something about it. And, in the CFO seat, I know, that intention equals budget. And so it's like, if we're going to do something about this, we got to resource this. We've got to put it on our board. If we're managing to objectives as an organization, this better be a top organizational objective. We're going to set targets. We're going to manage to this thing, and we're going to be great at it. And then, so there's intention, there's action, and then you've got to manage this process and drive accountability to the result. And just like you do anything else, right? If we're managing to unit output, we've got core processes and strategies that say, we're going to hit this number, we're going to manage it this way, and these are the expectations. You've got, as a dealership, to elevate talent acquisition to that level of strategic importance and give it that attention that is frankly required to be good at it.
Right. Well, it's really good advice. And I was just jotting it down. You really laid that out really nicely. The number one, decide, right? Set your intention that this is important. Number two, allocate the resources needed to match what you intend to do. And then manage the process and hold accountable to what you expect. I'm curious, where do you view, retention as a strategy in this as well? Because it would seem like the flip side to this is, okay, well, once you're good at bringing in the right people, well, man, you better be great at keeping them. Am I there on to that, or would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's the whole game, right? If I can keep 100% of my people when I'm staffed, I don't have a recruiting problem. Exactly. I mean, you've got a hole in the bucket. Right now dealerships turn 70% of their sales staff over annually, and about 45% of total staff, technician turnovers in the 30s. You've got to work hard just to get to even every single year. And so if I'm thinking about the intention to be great at this, I'm thinking about being great at marketing to and acquiring talent, but really I'm putting my effort into employee friendly strategies that keep people there. And that is so critical. And the concept, and let you comment on it, is employment is a product. And you may have heard me talk about this before. A job is a product. You have to think about it like that in this market.
Right.
When you've got 2x the demand relative to the supply, the power is with the applicant or the employee, and it will always be there in this business. So I'm selling to them.
Yeah.
I'm marketing a product. And if that product is not one that they want to buy and keep, I'm going to have a turnover problem. So what are the features of a product, an employment product that this market wants? What kind of employment product does a technician want to buy?
Right. That's
how I'm thinking. I'm thinking about this.
That's a great way, because you're right. If there's 2 open roles for every one person qualified for that role, then
what makes yours more attractive?
Right. What makes yours more? And I guess, in working with thousands of dealers across the country and applicants and hiring, what are you seeing as some of those key factors, those selling points of that product?
And just to add to that question a bit, Adam, when you look at those selling points, what are the behaviors that you have to identify among those people to make sure they'll be set up for success if you are able to attract them?
Yeah, to the first question, there are really 2 things. If I'm building a product, the features of this product that I need to be able to represent in the market are, number one, and this has changed over the years, flexibility, number one.
Oh, we have a question on that coming up right after. We're going to get back to that. Sorry to interrupt.
Is it meaningful to me? Right. It used to be in automotive retail that the number one thing people wanted was wage stability.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
Right. Not the most pay, but we were trending in the mid-teens. When we would survey the market, they would say, "Look, the industry's interesting, but these draws and commission plans or flag time, this is tough. I want to get paid for my time, not my output." So what I was screaming from the mountaintop 5 years ago was, every other employer in your market is paying people for their time. We are the only industry that pays people for their output.
Right.
And so if someone's looking at 5 opportunities that are all relatively similar, they're going to go with the one that on a risk adjusted basis is the most financially beneficial to them. Right. And so you're already selling a product uphill against the current, whatever metaphor you want to use, when you're in a transaction where the employee takes most or all of the risk.
Sure.
So we're in a market now where if I'm thinking about comp plans, I'm thinking about how do I de-risk the comp plan to give them peace of mind. But then it's this notion of flexibility as a benefit. And it is the most important benefit to the workforce as told in our research. Right. I want flexibility to the greatest extent possible in when I work and where and how I work. Because 10 years ago, we talked about work-life balance, but now post-COVID, we live in a world where it's just life.
Right.
It's a complete integration of work and life. And so if I come to work for you, are your policies flexible such that I can live life in the way that I need to live it now, with all that's changed in our society around schools and childcare and healthcare and just consumer habits and expectations.
Right. So that was something Mark and I were hotly debating before this, in terms of, you have a great book, The Best Team Wins. And that book was written pre-pandemic. I'm correct in that, right? And
yes,
we think about now, like, you see the debate. It's on Twitter, it's on LinkedIn, work from home or not, right? What is the best mix to create the best teams? And we were thinking about you and your book, and
has that perspective
changed, right? Do you need to add another chapter now that talks about the dynamics of team building, working from home and working in the office, and where is the optimal mix? And you see it from the CEO of Google to the CEO of Apple, different perspectives, very different perspectives. And we were curious, having been an authority on this and an expert, where do you see this going in terms of creating the best teams, working from home or not?
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought about what would I write differently or add to that book post pandemic, and
right.
the reality is what was true then is still true now, that if your employee base feels like you have their best interests in mind, they're going to be more engaged and more satisfied. The notion of what that means is different now than it was 5 years ago. To have my best interests in mind means to have trust that I want to do my best work for you, to have trust that if you're flexible with my work arrangement, I'm not going to take advantage of that.
Right.
Right. It's to make the charitable assumption that your workforce really does want to do their best, and that because I can't see you doesn't mean you're not working. And I think that's the biggest roadblock that most folks in this business have had. I mean, again, you can't do tech work remotely, but I'm thinking about the BDC. I'm thinking about, in some cases, service writers. I'm thinking about the sales process. I'm thinking about corporate staff. The reality is people want the trust and flexibility. And so if I'm operating a culture where that trust isn't there, that puts me at a disadvantage.
For sure. And let's be real about it. I mean, in the car business, working retail, it is one of the most inflexible work environments and one of the harshest work environments out there.
High stress.
You mentioned the output formula, but I just think about the sheer number of hours. I've always been so impressed with the dedication of retail associates that work bell to bell 6 days a week. And that's the norm, in a sense, and I think flexibility, maybe work from home is a bit extreme for a retail environment, but flexibility does it really have to be 12 hours a day, 6 days a week? Right. Are there other ways to create flexibility in that schedule? Would you say that's a fair maybe way to put it into retail dealership context?
I do. And take it a step further, depending on what that individual potential employee wants out of their employment relationship, you should have a product that meets that need. So there is a slice of the workforce that wants to show up every day and work 12 hours. We have a product for that, right? There is a slice of the workforce that would love to work 4 10-hour or 4 12-hour days.
Right.
I don't have a product for that.
Right.
There's a slice of the workforce that would love to staff your BDC 10 to 20 hours a week. I don't have a product for that. Right. There's a slice of the workforce that would love to sell vehicles only on nights and weekends as a second opportunity. I don't have a product for that. And so if I'm thinking about expanding the addressable market for talent in my market, most dealers have one product. It's the 60 to 80 hour a week show up and grind product. There's nothing wrong with that product because some people want to buy that product. But if I'm short staffed and I'm trying to solve a forever problem, I don't have enough product mix to find enough people to stay fully staffed. So I start thinking, okay, what products does this market want to buy? I need a part-time product. Right. I need a base pay product. I need a flex time technician product. I need to innovate around scheduling and shift management and offer options and say to someone, look, if you want to work here, there's 3 different ways we can do this. We can go A, B, or C. Based on your needs, tell me which one of these feels like the right fit for you. What are you looking for? And what that does is put a little more complexity on the role of a manager, but that's
Right.
what, that's the job. The job is getting the most out of your people. I need to get the most out of my people. I need flexibility in the products that I deliver. That's what I'd be thinking about as the dealer principal or as a platform executive. It's like, I just need to give people more options that enable them to show up and be productive.
So Adam, talking about that, identifying the right talent, you've done a fair amount of research. Your company does a fair amount of research, and if I may be a little self-promotional, you've done some studies here with us at JM&A Group, which have been fantastic. Talk a little bit about what those behaviors that a dealer can identify among talent that they're trying to recruit. There are some key behaviors that dealers are looking for or should be looking for that'll lead directly to success in their jobs. What can you talk a little bit about what those behaviors are that dealers should be on the lookout for?
Absolutely. And this is one thing in the book that hasn't changed. The research shows the number one behavioral trait that predicts success more than any other is accountability. And in psychology terms, it's referred to as the locus of control. So do I believe that the things that happen in my life, both at work and personally, are a result of my own actions and decisions, good or bad? Or do I ascribe the outcomes that happen in my life to things outside my control? So I'll give you an example in the employment sense. If I ask you a question in an interview, tell me about the last time you set a professional goal and failed to achieve it, right? That happens to all of us. No one's 100%. The second question in the follow-up is the most important. Okay, why? What happened? And what I want to listen for is whether or not someone gives me an answer that takes accountability for the result or that ascribes it to something they had no control over. So for example, I could have done a better job with time allocation. I really wasn't as tight on my time allocation as I could. I wasn't prospecting enough. And so my results were a little whippy. And, I learned that, I just need better time management. And these are some of the things I did. Great answer. An example of an answer that demonstrates an external locus of control would say, they gave me their CRM system was awful.
Right.
Or, the market was terrible. They didn't have inventory. They weren't running enough incentives. They wouldn't let me do X, Y, or Z.
It's almost identifying that victim mentality that sometimes you see among people where they are not taking that accountability. And
literally the one thing you can do to improve your hiring result is screen for locus of control. You can do it with that question and similar questions. I want you to tell me whether or not the things that happen in your life are based on things you did and take ownership for, or are you going through life assigning blame for the things that happen to you? What is more typical, do I own the good things and blame for the bad things? Which is the trait when good things happen, I'm great. But when bad things happen, he's bad. Yeah. That's the mindset. And, under no circumstances do I want someone with an external locus of control on my payroll. Because people that take accountability, they don't need to be managed. They need to be pointed in a direction and supported. Because they have the wiring to go get what you're asking them to get. And they're going to tell you, this is what I need. This is what's not working, or this is where I fell short versus this place is a mess. Yeah. You're not giving me what I need to be successful.
And you talked about creating that high trust environment for your employees. How do you earn trust at a job? You're highly accountable.
Yep, for sure.
Correct. And, and it goes both ways. How you earn trust as an employer is doing what you said you're going to do also.
Right.
which is these are the expectations I have. Very clear. Are you bought into those and understand that? Yes, I do. Great. So when they don't happen, it's not a "you're driving me nuts, I don't like you" conversation. The conversation is, help me understand when we set these goals, where did we miss? What have we gotten wrong? What do you need from me? Here's what I need from you. It's a less emotional conversation about a shared commitment, and people who are accountable really want to have that conversation. And when you do that, trust is built and engagement goes up. And when you don't, the opposite happens.
Yep.
Such a great point.
Yeah.
So Adam, I think it's time now for what we like to refer to as the fastest growing segment among automotive podcasts. It's called A Sure Thing. And, speaking of goals and setting objectives, Elliot sets out a goal for himself to come up with some interesting hot takes.
And I like to hold myself accountable to the results.
Exactly.
Well. And Mark likes to keep score so he can egg me on.
It's part of that accountability.
That's right.
Loop.
Yeah, we all needed a partner for that.
Exactly. Yep. So Adam, you're going to help Elliot here hold himself accountable on these opinions or these hot takes in a segment we call A Sure Thing. So Elliot, let's take it away.
Yeah. And at the risk of maybe going against some of the content in this podcast here, because there were really some
we've learned a lot.
Great insights. This has been very, very insightful. But, talking about work from home, I do have a belief and a feeling around working from home. And I'm going to put myself out there for a second, but I believe that teams do need to get together physically at least a couple of times a month in order for peak team enablement. So I believe that 100% work from home does not lead to optimal team structures. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
Sure thing.
All right.
One for one.
Start.
So Adam, you are in the school that there is a need for some physical interaction at some points in the team building stages or the team cohesion. Would you? Yeah.
Yes, it's particularly important for new to the industry hires, whatever the industry is. Earlier in your career, the research that's emerging is showing the ramping and the learning curve is far longer with remote only than some blend of hybrid or in person. You learn much more slowly, right? So it's a ramp time question. But for everyone, we can correlate engagement in the role to some amount of time spent with the people I'm working with.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, good. All right. Well, that wasn't very controversial today. And the other one that I had here was really not controversial either. It's kind of an easier one, but
kind of a softball, if you will.
It's kind of a softball, but we'll do it anyway. But
why not? Give it a shot.
In talking about employee motivation and why people choose one company over another. I think there's a common thing in the industry and really in most corporations to fall back on income and money as the primary driver for people's hiring decisions, why someone chooses the product of someone's employment over someone else's money. And throwing money at the problem is the way to hire people. So I believe that throwing the money is really not even in the top two of consideration for people in terms of employment, in terms of making the most money. Now, of course, being paid a fair wage is important, but in terms of the most compensation, I don't believe it to be in the top. You know what? We'll make it challenging.
Okay, here we go.
Top three in consideration of people's employment today. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
Is it in the top three? Sure thing.
It's a sure thing, and I'll tell you, it's actually 9th on the list.
9th? Oh, wow. Man,
maximum income, make the most money. I'll pick the job that pays me the most.
Yeah,
is ninth on the list.
9th. Okay, well, we're going to have to send out that list and get a copy of that to our readers because our listeners, because we do get there's other schools of thought, and I agree with you, Adam. My experience, it's not the biggest motivator at all.
Yeah, employment has to, if you're going to do this right and focus on retention, it cannot be a time for money transaction.
Exactly.
I'm just selling you my time for the most money is the textbook, competing on price, textbook definition of a commodity.
Right.
And if you view labor as a commodity, price will always win. But what we find is that flexibility in work schedule is worth about 20% of the pay.
Wow. Do that math,
So,
people. Start doing the math.
I will trade money for flexibility and I'll be more engaged. And so, there's no competitive advantage to paying another $1 an hour. There is a competitive advantage to having an engaged workforce that understands the value your product is delivering to them as an employer, and that it's not just about maximum pay if I'm being paid fairly, if I have a career path, and if I believe in the organization and the mission of that organization, I will work for less money and be more productive and happy and stay longer.
Right. Wow.
Great point.
Great. All right.
You're 2 for 2.
Man.
This might be unprecedented
I
in the history of sure thing.
I do not think this will be a sure thing.
Can you go 3 for 3?
I doubt it.
Let's
find out. Adam, we know you're a Chicago guy, from Chicago. We talked a little bit about it, went to school in Chicago. And we were doing, and of course your book, The Best Team Wins. So Mark and I did a little research on the old Google machine, and we came across some lists of the best sports teams ever. Interestingly enough, the Chicago Bulls top out on that list, specifically the list that we saw, the 1995-96, right?
That's correct.
Well, who was on that team, Mark?
Well, one person you may remember, Michael Jordan.
Right.
Yeah. Scottie Pippen. Rodman.
Right. A classic team. They went 72-10, right? They won their first 30. They went 37-0 at home to start the season. And according to a lot of the lists on the internet, they are the number 1 team of all time. But I believe, Adam, that the 72 Dolphins are in fact the number 1 team of all time. 72 Dolphins, only team in any major sport to go undefeated regular season and postseason. And I don't think you can argue with undefeated.
Wow.
I really don't.
All right, Adam,
so
what do you think?
I believe the 72 Dolphins are the best team of all time. Sure thing or not a sure thing, Adam?
There's no way that's a sure thing, man. I mean, you're comparing, apples to chocolate, bud.
Oh, wow. And I got the sense that the apples were the Dolphins there.
Yeah. I don't know. I think 72 Dolphins were an exceptional team, but the orchestra that was the mid-90s Dennis Rodman Bulls team is you're never going to see that again. It is that's the standard.
Top of the mountain.
It's definitely a study in team chemistry
for sure.
No doubt about it.
I do think I don't know. No, let's say the Patriots had, that season they lost that one game, had been undefeated.
That's right.
Would we consider them the greatest sports? No, I don't think so. I think to lose 10 basketball games, but there's also the personality and story behind that Bulls team. I mean, it's, been canonized in that documentary. I don't know. I think that's not a sure thing. I think in fact, I would say the inverse is the sure thing.
Okay. I'll take it.
Too good to be true, but 2 for 1's pretty good, Elliot.
Well, thank you, Adam. That was a great podcast.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Great conversation. So if you're a business owner, if you're a business leader,
definitely,
this is a must listen because you've given us so much insight and great strategies to help your business continue to grow and thrive in this market. So Adam, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And, enjoy the day. And, I'll just pine for my mid-90s Bulls again, because it's been pretty bleak in Chicago. The only sure thing here now is that I'm going to be disappointed by someone.
Oh boy, no doubt. You'll hear it from someone. Believe me, we do all the time. So,
Take care,
all right.
Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Bye.